So, let me start off by asking you a question. How much do you believe Jesus is going to meet your needs this week? Now, sometimes when these questions come, you can get this little funny feeling inside, I'm not sure. And in a society which is very secularized, sometimes we can be not quite sure whether we're allowed to be sure. But Jesus is entirely trustworthy. This is one of his big characteristics that helps Jesus to meet our needs. We can rely on him. Another aspect of Jesus that we have to remember is the sheer size of his divine nature. How big our God actually is, and how different he is, and yet how much he is the same as us. That's a tricky thing to get our heads around, but it's very important. You see, the temptation when we visualize God is to visualize somebody, that looks like us. And he doesn't. Well, what about Jesus? Well, Jesus was essentially God and man. And the man would have looked very Jewish. He wasn't white Caucasian. He wasn't black African. He was a straightforward Israeli Semite. And his generations going back a long way have been pretty much in the same place, certainly for 1,000 years. And the skin colour and his physical characteristics would have reflected that. But that's not the point. God, we're talking about a multidimensional being outside of time that initiates the creation and then watches over the universe. The sheer size and dimensional nature of a God like that is not something that you can paint or draw. It's not something you can put on a film. It's beyond CGI, and there's a sense in which it helps to be a little bit intuitive to try and lock into something of the dimensions of God. All of us have the capacity to sense God. We're told in the Bible that it is God that has put eternity in our hearts. We were made in the image of God precisely so that we could have relationship with him, because the image of God is a spiritual image and we can engage with God spiritually. That's why Jesus says to the woman at the well in John 4, there will come a time when it won't matter where you worship. The crucial thing will be that you worship in spirit and in truth. How does that help God to meet our needs? Well, it means that no problem or situation is too difficult for him. And yet, he also knows more about us than we ourselves. He understands us more than we understand ourselves. He looks inside of us and he sees everything. So whenever we pray to him, whenever we talk to him about anything, he already knows. But you see, he doesn't just want to see us, he wants to have a relationship with us. And that means we have to share. But then we have to trust. We can imagine our lives to be like houses. And there are people you talk to on the doorstep that you don't really want to invite in. And then there are people who you do want to invite in, people you wouldn't dream of having standing outside your door. You know, my son turns up, I'm not going to say, oh, well, it was nice to see you, and I'm, you know, have a chat for 5 minutes and then shut the door. I'm going to say, come on in, and if he wants to stay the night, you stay the night. If he wants to stay 2 nights, he stays 2 nights, and so on. So, where do we want God in the house of our lives? If we open the door and invite him in and ask him to be involved in our lives, then that also means that he will begin to increasingly meet our needs, not just our physical needs. We live in an affluent society where that's far less of an issue than it might be in other parts of the world. But our spiritual needs, and through meeting our spiritual needs, our emotional needs, our psychological needs. God meets us at a deeper level than we could even meet ourselves. So this week, let's start the week by saying to God, through Jesus, I trust you to meet my needs. I trust you to meet my needs. I submit all I am to you so that you can deal with me, knowing that you will do the very best that anyone can do with my life. And you are on my side, and you will never let me down, and you will never let me go. And then when we go out into our week, let's just have a little eye to seeing how things go, how God tweaks and changes little circumstances in our lives for our blessing and benefit. Let's remember to give thanks to him as we go along for the things that happen during the week. And you know what will happen is, firstly, you'll have a sense that God is at work in your life in very strange and little ways that perhaps you never thought he would be. And secondly, that you'll find that you have extra support in what you do, and you will be less burdened in what you do. Have a good week, but make sure you've given it to God first.